Welcome to a post-game episode of This Week in Habsland. I'm Jordan, he's Brian. We are coming to you after the Canadiens drop Game 1 of their best-of-7 series to the Washington Capitals, 3-2 in overtime. A game that had, I think, Brian, a little bit of everything from the very prototypical, and I was loving the narratives that were forming in this game about physicality of the Caps. The Canadiens look young, the Canadiens look small. That second intermission on Sportsnet was nauseating. The Habs flipped the script in the third, are easily the better team. And quite frankly, the second period, I'd like to know your thoughts. I feel like the scales kind of balanced in the second, and then the third, the Canadiens took over. Unfortunately, the overtime does not go the Habs' way. A lot to discuss, Brian. But for this era's, I know Suzuki was in the previous 2021 playoffs, but for the Suzuki era, their playoff debut as a collective, what did you think?
I think they looked like the youngest ever NHL team to reach the playoffs.
Right.
Which they are. Mm-hmm. They're exactly that. The youngest NHL team to ever reach the playoffs, and at least for the 51st minutes of the game, they looked like it. The second period, the scales did tip, but not enough. They at no point gained control of the game for long enough, I think, to gain momentum, create a bunch of chances. Really, the last 10 minutes, Caufield gave them life. I always find when I'm watching a playoff series, as soon as it begins, as a playoff team, you don't exist until you've scored.
Right.
You're dormant, whatever you want to call it. But thank you very much to Cole Caufield for finally capitalizing, and to the power play that seems to be producing great scoring chances once again, because it was so clear that the Canadiens did not have an offensive direction until that goal went in. And then they realized, if we just throw stuff on net, charge the net, good stuff will happen. And it did. The shots were 30-23 with 10 minutes left in the game. The Canadiens took the next 11 shots to score 2 goals and tie it up. And both of those were somewhat dirty goals. The first one being that sort of ricochet into the slot, Caufield capitalizes. And then the second one, clutch captain Nick putting in a goal after just a kind of chaotic fire alarm in the defensive zone for the Capitals. So the youth showed for most of the game. I'm hoping it's going to help them in terms of the longevity of this series, because you're right to point out also that Washington's physicality was something to contend with tonight.
Yeah, let's stick on the Suzuki stuff, and or the Suzuki line, and tie in the power play there. From a power play perspective, this is the nicest thing I'll say about Patrick Laine all day, is he was engaged in the power play, had a good chance on the first opportunity. So did Suzuki. Suzuki went blocker a couple times on Logan Thompson. And then the second wave of the second power play opportunity that they got in that third period, they eventually get the goal. And then the patience by Suzuki on his game-tying goal is just 90% of guys just shoot the puck immediately. Suzuki figured out, he saw the Washington defensemen quite literally falling over themselves and falling over Logan Thompson.
Yes.
And he's just give me, Lane Hudson too, for a moment too, was let me wait a half a second and then get it, then take my shot, and then Suzuki got it. So that first line, I made a big deal in the preview about the Suzuki line likely going to get matched up against the PLD line. And for the most part, that was the case. But at least for game 1, the Suzuki line manhandled PLD's line. This is a courtesy of Andrew Berkshire on Blue Sky. Through the 60 minutes, so through regulation, I guess it probably didn't change much beyond the one shift that they had. The Suzuki line had an 80% shot attempt percentage and an 81% expected goal percentage in the 10 head-to-head minutes. So
wow.
That was one of the main kind of head-to-heads we were looking at, right? Suzuki line versus PLD, especially in Washington. Test passed, easy work. Now, again, game 2, maybe something changes. But Suzuki and Caufield were going all night. Caufield had a beautiful back check, I think, in the third period, the one which actually eventually led to the drawing the penalty, because Matheson and Carrier were kind of out to lunch. Caufield has a beautiful back check. Those two guys were on it. I think they were the two best players on the team today. Oh, skaters. Montembeault, of course.
Yes. Yeah, you have to clarify that.
Yeah. Slav kind of revved up, kind of a bit, some guys on the team, and that kind of speaks to the playoff inexperience, I guess. Do you want to talk about the physicality and maybe the refereeing for 2-3 minutes?
Sure, I definitely do. I think that it's always a shame when you don't know what to expect going into the playoffs. So I've been thinking more about what you had pointed out, I think it was last episode, about how the referees don't actually put their whistles away in the playoffs. And I realized what it is, Jordan. It's that, yes, the numbers go up. Yes, the amount of penalties go up in the playoffs. But the proportion of what is called versus not, because the playoffs are so much rougher, that's what's distorted here. So if it's 30% instead of 50% of a particular thing getting called, it has to be more egregious in the playoffs. That I think that's what's skewing the numbers here, because there was a lot that was let go. It seemed as though cross checks to the face, boarding, charging, hits like interference, hits after or not after the whistle, but like well after the guy's gotten rid of the puck already. Those all were kind of okay. You're allowed to do those things.
Yeah.
And then just the little farfelu, little bousculade in the crease or in the corner after the whistle that doesn't affect the play, that's what was getting called. So it's nice to know where the goalposts are. That if nothing else, that's a lesson for the series, and hopefully they're consistent throughout. But that's a lesson in what you can do, what you can't do. I won't call it bias, but I did think that the Capitals kind of got their way a little bit with the referees. They knew how to toe the line so much better than Montreal, and that's probably the main story in terms of the penalties tonight.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that the Canadiens came back, and this is not the prevailing story of the game. But certainly the Capitals understood what playoff refereeing was going to be like today.
Yeah.
Game 2 could be ticky-tack, could be a light hook slash. Look,
Right.
The Canadiens, Anderson could have really cost the Habs because he had a dumb hit way after the whistle during a line change on Tom Wilson that 9 times out of 10 in the regular season, that's a penalty. So they got away with one. The Capitals, I think, got away with a lot more because they understood those goalposts you were talking about. They knew exactly how far they had been moved, and they went right up to the line with the borderline late hits on interference, the extra slashes. The moment you saw the cross check to the face on Gallagher 5 minutes in, and then 2 minutes later, a punch to the head on Lane Hudson and nothing getting called, Washington understood, okay, that's how far we can take it. The only one that I look, it's playoffs. You understand they're gonna move the line on some stuff. The only one that I was like, okay, this was bad, was the Leonard hit on Demidov in the third. That one was borderline dangerous and certainly interference, and he did not have the puck at all in any capacity.
No,
that was the one that I was like, okay, I get we're doing the playoff refereeing stuff, but that's one you probably should be calling. But credit to the Capitals, at least for the first 2 periods. Third period, once the Canadiens started putting numbers on the board, the physicality disappeared, right? That became less something the Caps were focused on. It was a little bit more, hey, we got to make sure we're not pinching up a little bit too much. We got to make sure we're covering and being on our defensive shell. There was definitely some game score effect, but that took a back seat, and I'm happy about that.
Yes, I think what causes that is Carberry has a very specific plan, it seems, for the Capitals. They attack, they forecheck with ridiculous physicality. They're so punishing in that way. That's the charging I was talking about, where just flying at you and leaving their feet to hit you, like just big hits. But when you're not attacking, you're not forechecking. When you're defending a lead, you're not physical in that way. Maybe you're physical to defend the goalie. But I even thought, you know what, you're right, though, because even in the third period, they were doing less boxing out of their crease for their goalie violently. And so I think they were probably just aware, like, okay, if we push the needle too much now, we could get a bad penalty. So they were good at recognizing where the line was, and they were good at staying nowhere near it later in the game, which that's a veteran club with, like, Tom Wilson might be the best line walker in the league. I made fun of the Capitals for giving him the amount of money that they did in that new deal of his, but in the playoffs, you see why they did it. They're trying to get Ovi another cup now for the next year or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. This is going to look good because Wilson understands playoff hockey and he's great at it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a mistake that Tom Wilson led the Caps forwards in ice time by a country mile. He's hovering around 22 minutes. I think Dylan Strome is the next. And even then, I don't think Strome hit 18 minutes. So this was a game built for Tom Wilson to thrive in. Now, again, I will say that the line with PLD got caved in against Suzuki, but in their other minutes they played decently enough. So that's the positive stuff for the Canadiens, right? Like, they fought back, and that's what's really important. Suzuki line, I think, was good throughout the game. If it's okay, Brian, I think I want to move to what I thought was the next best part of this game, and that was the Evans line, which we kind of saw little glimmers of hope in the last game of the season. We said, oh, Heineman being back it's not just the slight threat of the offense, and that the fact that he has the fourth best shot on the team after Suzuki, Caufield, and Laine. It's also the fact that he's a killer forechecker, and he adds a little bit of extra energy to that line if you have the other two guys going. And I thought, now the advanced stats might disagree, but I thought they were easily the second best line today, especially going down the stretch in the third period. What did you see? And first of all, do you agree with that statement, or do you think it was maybe the Dvorak line that was slightly better? The utilization was fairly comparable, but I thought I saw overall, eye test at least, that the Evans line was doing its job in terms of like being a fourth line that had energy, that was able to get long offensive zone time. Again, never really creating too many chances, but doing their job as a fourth line.
Yeah, well, they forced some freezes, which gives you an offensive zone draw, and then your top line is out or your second line is out trying to score a goal. So, yeah, I think the fourth line was great. I think the third line could probably be in their same tier. Maybe the fourth line just did their job a little bit better and had more stamina or staying power, because as the game went on, you started to see the bumps and bruises on the Gallagher, Dvorak, Anderson line, who I thought were fairly good. But both of these lines... Actually, not so much. The fourth line was not noticeable a lot of the time, which is actually good for their role. Mm-hmm. But when the third line was not noticeable, it's because they weren't forechecking as hard anymore, which out of the gate, they actually came out very good.
Yeah.
I thought. Like, all the way until, like you said, Gallagher gets cross-checked in the face before the 4-minute mark of game one. I didn't expect anything less. Yeah, I would give it to the fourth line. Being the second best line, second most effective. They were good defensively too, which obviously is huge for their role.
Yeah, so just if we're looking at expected goal percentage, which is never going to be a all-encompassing stat, but the first line was at 78%. That meets the eye test by a mile. The fourth line with Jake Evans was at 48%, and then it just craters after that. It's sub 20% for the Dvorak line. I thought they got pinned in on at least 3 shifts where it was one of those, hold on to your butts a minute 15 in a defensive zone, praying to God that no one snaps a stick and that Monty has to be a superhero. Right. There was 2 or 3 shifts like that where it was just 4 or 5 shot attempts, and that's happened way too many times down the stretch. And then, we can get to the second line, or I don't even know if it's a second line anymore, quite frankly. Their expected goal percentage was 7.73.
Oh my God.
So
that's horrendous.
Let's get into that, because the Dvorak line today was no harm, no foul. It was there. It needs to be better. The Canadiens, if this team can have 3 lines going, forget 4, just 3 lines going, they're a very, very good hockey team. They have the Suzuki line going. It's been going for a few games. I'm very confident in that. Mostly sticking around. I'm sure the Capitals can make adjustments, but not in terms of personnel. I don't think there's anyone different you can put on them. They had Chikrin's pairing out there almost the entire time as well. So they put Suzuki up against the best possible matchup. The Evans line for a fourth line did its job today. If you can have one of the other 2 lines going, if that third line with the vets can kind of regain that form they had in March, then you have a different team.
Yep.
But we're here now to talk about the Alex Newhook line, which was rough. It was rough today. The Canadiens took 57 faceoffs today. Alex Newhook took 9 of them. The Alex Newhook line took 9 of them, and 2 of them that, by my count, including the final one, were only because it was icing. So, what did you see?
I want to say a lack of preparedness. It's like they didn't understand their defensive responsibilities, certainly, but even the stuff that they had been capable of doing, like Newhook especially, just carrying the puck calmly through the zones to get offensive zone time. Even the simple stuff like that, he seemed just janky tonight. Like, that line had the yips. They just couldn't get anything going, couldn't do anything right. Demidov didn't exactly look like himself. I didn't see him try anything crazy. He had one great shot at one moment, but that was a shot that most scoring wingers would probably take. He didn't impress me with that, the way that he had done craziness to impress me in the game prior. This line needs to be much better. The face-offs, obviously, that's something that you can point to. I
think it's more about the trust, really. Like, he went 3-5, which is not the end of the world. But, like, I think if you had asked Marty in overtime, I think there was only 3 guys he was sending out for face-offs. Evans, Suzuki, and Dvorak.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No one else. He was never going to send willingly the new hook line out there unless it was in the flow of the game. Even an offensive zone chance, I don't even think he would have given it to them. And that speaks to just the lack of, I mean, it's definitely a lack of chemistry, but you could tell me that Demidov would have been here for 10 or 15 games. And I'm not sure the pieces fit.
To look at him when it's his first ever NHL playoff game at such a young age, it's the other two guys. It's those guys that really had to take him under their wing and be like, this is how we play hockey. But they hadn't even really figured out how they play hockey together yet without Demidov. So to bring him in and to expect it to all work, we saw glimpses of him really helping Newhook's game. But tonight, that just very obviously was not the case. Every other line at least had moments that were very strong. I think, like, I was actually very surprised at the advanced stats for the third line, because anytime they were forechecking, they seemed to sort of, get an ensuing draw in the offensive zone or just bury them in deep for a little while. But you're right, they got hemmed in more than they did hemming. So
I think that what happened with the Dvorak line is maybe from a puck possession standpoint, they did all right. But in terms of chances and quality chances created versus conceded, that's where they got caved in, really.
Yeah, that's true, man, because the chances that I remember are Gallagher coming in on a 2-on-2 and just stopping up at the top of the circle and releasing a relatively weak wrister. Those are the shots I remember from that line tonight.
Yeah, so look, this game is really just a microcosm of the whole season, right? Like, first line, gangbusters, elite, number one center.
Yeah.
Slav, it was happening slowly with Slav. He needs to be better. He did the thing again where he keeps trying to reach with the stick in his, his arm and his long reach. Got to keep moving the feet. But overall, that line was gangbusters. The Evans line was pretty good. And then inconsistency from the third line and wasteland from the second line. And that's just what we've been saying all season, right? There was the experiment with Kirby Dach at the beginning of the year. You and I were preaching patience, and it was just not happening with Dach. Newhook's been in there, and there's just been no clear solution. Anything on the defense before we start shifting into, and I guess Monty. Let's do Monty first, and then quickly to defense before we start talking about what you think should change going into game 2. Montembeault saves the team in the first period, right?
No question.
They got killed. They were getting, it was the classic survive the first 10 minutes. That was the most physical the Capitals were going to be. That was the most energy that crowd was going to have. Monty stood tall. I know they concede the goal with 2 minutes left or whatever on Ovechkin, and obviously Ovechkin has 2 goals tonight. And like there was some commentary about like whether Savard should have been in a slightly better position to block that shot from Ovechkin in the first period, but like it's freaking Ovechkin, man. Like he's gonna find the little bit of space between the defender, the goalie, and the post.
I mean, they did basically everything they could. When that power play started, Anderson was glued to Ovechkin. He wouldn't let Ovechkin get more than 3-4 feet away from him. So, that happens for maybe the first 40 seconds. There's a clear, and then they come back, and then Monty actually makes a really good save on Ovechkin after Anderson had gone off, and then like a half a minute or something remaining in the first, I don't remember, but shooting through a screen. That's the Monty playbook. We've said it before. So Savard tries to block it, wasn't in the right position. We've also said about Savard many times, the speed is not there anymore. So it's possible he recognized it in time. His brain probably did, and he just couldn't get there in time. So I don't blame him for that one. He got down and attempted to block the shot. That's what you have to do. I don't know what to say about it. And the fact that it was the Gooley and Newhook roughing penalties on that craziness that created that chance is very bothersome, because that really was a monstrous turning point in that game for Washington to gain even more momentum than they already had. But let's get back to Montembeault, because yes, he was fantastic. He also made a like Superman diving with his chest save on Ovechkin very early in the game. Like he saved Ovechkin a bunch of times. I want to look right now, actually. How many shots did Ovechkin have on net? 4 shots on net. All right, 2 went in. So he made the Superman save and one other that I'm not remembering. But you can't stop the grade 8 forever.
Listen, again, Monty did his job today. 0 people are going to be faulting Samuel Montembeault. He's right up there with Suzuki and Caufield for the reason this team made it to overtime. No notes on Samuel Montembeault's playoff debut. A lot of guys had a playoff debut today. None of those guys look better than Montembeault. On the defense, Matheson, I'll just come out and say it, terrible first period. just brutal. I do think, just in general, the entire defensive core got better as the game went along. Now, it doesn't mean there weren't bad mistakes. Hudson's certainly at fault for the Beauvillier goal on this failed clearance. And that's the Habs playbook. That's like good scouting too. Like, the Canadiens struggle particularly at like non-organized zone breakouts.
Yes.
That is textbook. How do you beat the Canadiens when they are trying to bring the puck out of the zone? Unless it's one of them line changes where everyone has 10, 15 seconds to get ready and everyone's gearing up and Uhook's doing 3 spinoramas to get up the ice. That's where the Habs really, really struggle, and the Capitals very clearly game planned it and executed well on that. Ovechkin also gets in behind Goulet and Hudson on the winning goal. So like learning steps, right? Those are 2 rookies who, if I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm fairly certain were number 1 and number 3 in ice time on the Montreal Canadiens this year. I think this game, Matheson's probably in between them in terms of most ice time tonight. Playoff debuts for those guys. It was hot and cold. Hudson obviously contributed offensively. Goulet had a little something of a chance late in the game as well. They got better as it went on, but there's certainly things I think they would want to clean up going into game 2.
Definitely. Lots to clean up. I liked the tag team retrievals that they were doing in the Canadian zone. So yes, once they got the puck comfortably, the clears didn't always work and they were intercepted. And that was that goal you were talking about before. But the retrievals they were doing where the opposing player is putting the puck past Hudson because he's usually the first guy to, go up and attempt to get the puck. Hudson keeps him there, and then Goulet takes off to where the puck's going to be. Hudson kind of blocks the guy there, and then breakout initiated. And sometimes Goulet has to take a monstrous hit. I remember one from Wilson very early, but he takes the hit and he gets the puck back to Hudson or to another player, and it works. But when you don't have enough time to do that or another planned breakout or zone entry or exit, that's when Washington was able to kind of capitalize. And that tiny mishandle of the puck, I keep just thinking of that when Goulet mishandles the puck slightly, and that causes Wilson to just rush in on him and crush him. That's how the Capitals play. Like, your margin of error when you play against the Capitals, it's a razor's edge. If you balk with the puck behind your net, you're going to get crushed with a body check. If you turn over the puck in your defensive zone, your goalie's going to have to make a great save or two within seconds of your giveaway, or they'll just put the puck in your net. The breakouts have to be clean, or you'll be forced to ice the puck. Which, by the way, happened 6 minutes and 30 seconds into the game and 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. And at that point, I was like, they're just going to destroy us by attrition.
Yeah.
Just by being relentless and forechecky and making you ice the puck and getting you hemmed in your zone. And if they continue like that, the Canadiens are going to have to just get so much sharper because the Capitals also were just a tempo faster. Mm-hmm. At everything tonight. Puck battling, they were finding pucks faster. Reacting to when a puck goes in the corner, they were getting to the puck faster. They just seem to be, maybe with the exception of the fire alarms in their own zone, they seem to be on the puck first, basically all game.
Yeah, it's playoff. This is peak playoff hockey, right? It's using pace and size to make your opponents or force your opponents into bad decisions. And it happened countless times tonight. Back to my thing, it was 25 and a half minutes for Lane Hudson, 24 minutes for Caden Goulet. Matheson is in the middle there. But that's a playoff debut for those two guys. Like, let's never lose the forest for the trees here. What an incredible experience. Like, those two guys being thrust into that role. It's too bad it ended the way it did. Brian, let's start closing out here. Any lineup changes, or are you doing something with the second line going into game 2? I mean, the power play had it. I know we glossed over it a bit. We're trying to keep these episodes somewhat short. We can definitely talk for 3 hours about the power play, but power play looked good, so we're probably not changing anything there. Yeah. Obviously, Monty is Monty. A lot of 70% of the things are not going to change. Anything about the second line, which could obviously affect the entire second, third, fourth line structure. And then there's the Jack Eye question again. Savard is clearly the number 6 defenseman, but especially with him announcing that he's retiring, that is like a literally impossible situation for St. Louis to be in right now. So what would you do going into game 2 after what we experienced in game 1?
I mean, I want to jump on the Jack Eye thing right away because Struble was definitely one of the weakest members, I think, of that defensive unit. And so I can't see Jack-Eye having a more adverse effect defensively than Struble already did tonight, and he brings the physicality. So, and maybe I'm giving Struble too hard a time. Maybe he just happened to be on the ice when bad things went on. But when that happens perpetually, some of it definitely falls on you. I would love to see Jack-Eye in this lineup. I think that Wilson and other players will take less liberties, especially with the small guys, like grabbing Lane Hudson at the face in scrums and, just picking on the little guys. I think that Jack-Eye would help deter some of that. It's tough to say. Other than that, no, the power play, you were right. They were really, really good. It took a broken play for them to actually score on it, but they had put on probably 3 or 4 shots prior to that on the first and second iteration of that power play that were great chances, great scoring chances. So they were producing opportunities, and the right ones. Suzuki did like a skate in from the top of the zone to receive a pass, take a shot on net. That's a standard. Line A took a few one-timers. So like they were doing well. I have less than no clue what to do with the second line though, Jordan. I really, really don't. I would love to see Heineman possibly get a bit more ice time, but then you're throwing Line A on the fourth line because it wouldn't be Demidov. I think he just needed to get his feet wet in playoff hockey, and maybe he'll be better next game.
Yeah, look, I don't know. We have been asking this question for 83 games now, basically. What is the second line?
Yeah.
Just an out there idea. What if it's Jake Evans on the second line with Demidov and X? Be that Newhook, be that Heineman.
A Heineman makes more sense than Newhook because he could do retrievals. Evans and Heineman do retrievals, and Demidov has a fun guy to pass the puck to in Heineman. Who can have a good release. I just think they're going to get severely outpaced, and Demidov isn't ready to be with. Then again, what's happening on the second line? So maybe it doesn't hurt to try.
I'm at a loss for solutions right now, and also sensitive to the fact that how little time there's left in the season, and that how you can't do the let's wait for guys to have chemistry. But also, I guess Demidov's played 3 games, so the opportunity cost is there's no chemistry in any capacity right now anyways, so what are you really losing? I don't know what the answer is. I've still wondered if there's there's something maybe about splitting the third line up, but how destructive do you get because one line is killing you? But also I don't think the third line's been working well for 2.5-3 weeks at this point. So
what I fear is that the Canadiens are only as good as these lines have been, and when you take them apart and they lose the chemistry, even the little bit of chemistry that they have, does it look even worse than that? Do the players that occupy the third line, when removed from there and put elsewhere, still understand their role as well? Because we've said it before, Anderson has a very specific role. I think he accomplished it for the most part tonight. Some blemishes, but for the most part, I think he was on. Same thing with Galley. He was disrupting things. He got a few shots on net. He was hungry, sniffing around the net. I just wonder if you put them elsewhere, does it alter things? I think the only one who you could even consider moving up would be Anderson. I feel like we've tried that before, and it just doesn't work creatively or offensively.
At this point, I think it's mostly, maybe I'm just figuring this out, it's mostly about optimizing Demidov.
You think that's the key? Okay.
I think that's the question you need to be asking yourself. For this short time frame, how can you optimize Demidov? And is it Dvorak with Anderson and Demidov? Is it Evans with Heineman and Demidov? I don't know. Is it Evans or Mia Demidov? I'm just trying to figure out, I care more about the answer to that than what do I do with Alex Newhook at center? Because I think that's a more important question, and solving that is more likely to generate a series win than the alternative.
Yeah. By solving that, though, you could also be, chopping the head off one snake and 3 snakes arise when you don't have that defensive unit of the fourth line anymore. Like if you've moved things around to the point where they don't defend as well anymore because Demidov doesn't understand the system yet, which fair enough, man. 3 games in, you're not going to understand the defensive system, the complex one that took half a year for the Canadiens even to understand themselves. So
some might say they're still trying to understand it.
I agree with that. I think that's a perfectly good assessment. The sneaking into the slot, take a drink, Habsland drinking game. They snuck into the slot once again, and this time it was Ovi 2.5 minutes into overtime to score that winner. So that's a tough lesson for these guys to learn. But I will say Hudson and Gooley, they're not going to make that mistake again. I think
lessons learned. That's what this is about, right? It's
lessons learned.
Wins and lessons.
Exactly.
They lose game one, but they showed their heart again. They showed the team that they are. They did not pull an Ottawa Senators. We can contrast. It's too bad they lost, but we can contrast what the Sens look like in their essential playoff debut versus the Canadiens in their playoff debut. And I think the Canadiens showed out better because they fought back. They did not lose their cool. They could have been, right? An alternate version of this team, and maybe that's the worry with Jack-Eye, is an alternate version of this team loses its head in the third period. But anyways,
Right.
I think we should wrap there, Brian. This was game one. There was a lot going on. An exciting hockey game, like very well played. I think on both ends, like both teams played a good hockey game. You know, there was no weird bounce that caused someone to win. Yes, Washington was maybe overly physical to the point where some people were wondering about the refereeing, but that's, you know, I think shoulder shrug emoji really at the end of the day. Anything else before we wrap, Brian?
No, I think just the pace of play, the Canadiens in game two have to improve that. They were supposed to win. They were supposed to lose game one anyway, right? Like basically everybody kind of was thinking they were going to lose game one anyway. So learn the lessons you have to from this, come back in game two, try and split that the time away because you're going to win at home.
Yep.
You're a home team, Canadians. Try and win one on the road and then come back home to the Bell Center.
Get game two, make it a best of 5, have home ice, have a great time. You can find us on social media at Habsland Pod. We'll be back after game 2. And until then, go Habs.